Tennessee This Week from WATE's 6 on Your Side starts now.
Hello and welcome to Tennessee This Week. I'm Bo Williams. This week we are talking about the race for Knox County Clerk, and I am joined right now by Richie Beeler, who is running for the position. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We were talking before we went on the air, but kind of go back over for me, if you will, just kind of the reasons why you're deciding this was the time. Just recently you decided to throw your name out there to be in the mix when we come to time to vote.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been the chief of staff in the office for a little over 3 years. I came to work for the current clerk,
Right.
Sherry Witt, back in 2022. And once I knew that I wanted to run, which you have to think about that,
Right.
make sure that you're sure.
Right.
And once I was sure that I wanted to do it, I thought, heck, why not go ahead and throw my name out there? Because if you don't do that and you're the person who's in the office, people might wonder, well, does this guy really even want it?
Right.
And I do, and so thought it was the time.
I was looking at a couple quotes you had, and one was, an important part of good government is seeking to improve what we already do well. So kind of explain that a little
Absolutely.
bit.
You know, I think the clerk that I work under she's a proven effective administrator. She was Register of Deeds for 8 years. She's been clerk now for 6.5. She runs a tight ship, as they say. And the clerk's office demands a lot. I mean, it's one of the biggest public-facing offices in the county. We have 6 locations, about 75 employees. And I think that the office runs really well, but everything truly great, if you think about it, in our world, is something that's always been seeking to improve itself. I always talk about Augusta National and how great it is, but it's always been, they respect tradition, but they always are seeking to improve, and they have.
Yeah. You know, it's something else, and you already kind of alluded to it, and it's another quote I saw. You say they are the government that is closest to the people, and it is vital that they have the people's trust. One of the most important public-facing agencies in Knox County, as you just mentioned.
Right.
Clerk's office should set the standard our citizens expect. But again, it is one of those, and you don't think about it till, and I hadn't thought about it till you mentioned it, but you are right. I mean, it's one of those positions. You're right there. I mean, this is there will be interaction.
No doubt.
You know, with the people who, you answer to, so to speak.
Yeah, I was in the registrar's office for about 30 years, and you might go to the registrar's office once or twice in your lifetime if you buy or sell property.
Right.
Some people might never go to the registrar's office. Almost everybody has to go to the clerk's office at some point. Either you own a car, or you get married, you open a business, you need an ID, a passport, so... yeah, a lot of people have to come in.
And let me ask you this. That's something that a lot of people maybe don't realize or don't think when it comes time to go to the polls and vote for these positions. But how much, yes, every single one of us at some point goes to the clerk's office.
For sure.
The amount of money that goes to the clerk's office, because you're talking registrations, marriage licenses, what have you. Do you think when it comes time to go to the polls, because sometimes we do look at the numbers and how many people actually turn out, if people had a better understanding, like, oh my gosh, yes, I go there once, twice a year.
Yep. I wish they did.
Yeah, well, that's true.
We see these huge numbers for president.
Yeah. Well, nowadays, though, I guess, too, you can mail it in or you can pay online and everything like that. But at the same token, I mean, the interaction between the two, if people had a better understanding, do you think it would bring more people out?
Oh, I absolutely do. And I don't know how we do that. One of the ways, I think, is if we taught civics in our schools, maybe a little bit more geared toward local government. Because there's so much attention on national politics, whether it's in blogs, social media, and as you know, 150,000 people or more will turn out to vote for president. But in a local election, which, like you say, it's where you actually interact with your government officials, you'll have a third of that maybe.
I guess right now a lot of people are interacting because of the real ID.
They are indeed.
Okay. We have seen the long lines. We have seen people coming through. How do you keep everything running smoothly? Because there is a lot going on.
One of the things we've tried to do is make sure we have people there early. I've been in at 7:30 on several mornings over the past couple of weeks, just meeting people in line, making sure they're there for the real ID, checking their paperwork. The clerk herself has done that as well. At our different locations, because you don't want someone to stand in line for 30 minutes for you to open and then not have the paperwork they need, because that's kind of out of our hands. Homeland Security, they determine what you got to have to get that real ID, and so we we're an agent for them, and we did about twice the number we normally would do just in April.
I was going to say, are you still expecting those numbers to continue? I mean, obviously there's a lot of people that did not hit the deadline, but it doesn't mean you still can't go get your real ID.
Correct.
And I guess that's something that a lot of people forget is the fact that, yeah, we keep saying a deadline, but that's just
Right.
if you want to travel, the next couple days,
Yep.
next couple weeks, but you can still get that real ID.
You definitely can. We'll be indefinitely issuing those, and
Right.
so. But when we've not seen a big drop off yet,
Right.
but maybe after the next week or so, we'll see some let up.
What kind of things now moving forward when you're out there talking to prospective voters to make sure that they check the box next to your name? What do you want to try to get out there?
I talked about the video I put out on my social media about 3 C words: challenge, conservative, and culture. The big challenge, of course, for the clerk is our growing county. I mean, look, we're twice the size roughly that we were when I was growing up here.
Right.
And just to keep up with the pace of the increasing population, because that has an almost direct effect on the clerk's office. When population increases, our volume is going to increase. So meeting that challenge, looking for possibly new locations, taking the government to the people. The Hardin Valley area has exploded. I've talked with Commissioner Hill and Commissioner Frazier about that and how we may need a location out there someday in the near future. The conservative part is that delicate balance between service and fiscal responsibility. You got to strike that balance,
Okay.
which I definitely intend to do because it's the people's money, right?
Right.
It's really about stewardship. And then, of course, culture. And gosh, I could talk for a long time about culture. It kind of eats strategy for breakfast. That's the saying, right? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. We can implement great strategies, and I think we have. I think our current clerk has. But culture is what I really want to major on. And you've heard the DMV lampooned by comedians and talked about in frustration. People sort of anticipate a negative experience when they go to get their car tags renewed or some other service. And they think, well, I'm going to walk into a room where it's really busy, it's really crowded, everybody's in a bad mood. That's culture. And I believe that can be changed. And I want to try to do that.
How do you do it?
I think there are a lot of ways you do it. One way you do it is by training your folks to have a different outlook, by empowering and raising up your staff, maybe different ways of appreciating your staff so that they feel really good about coming to work and good about interacting with each other, and then therefore good about interacting with the public.
You always hear, the customer comes first, or the customer's always right, or what have you. But really, I've heard a lot of people also say it should be the other way around, that the employee should come first because then that trickles down to the customer relations, and you're able to get more done.
There's truth in that. And it's a little unique with government because the customer is our boss.
That's true.
Especially in an elected office. And listen, nobody does that better than our current clerk in terms of putting the customer first, making people feel seen and that they matter, and making sure they get what they need if we can do it. But I think there's a way to, I want to make the clerk's office a place where people want to be rather than a place they can't wait to get out of.
When you're driving over there thinking, I wonder how this is going to be. But obviously one of the things, people talk about lines and what have you. There's a lot of different things that can be, as you said, things go well, but there's always rooms for improvement.
There certainly are. Well, again, looking for perhaps some new locations. Hey, just a cup of cold water goes a long way.
Oh, that's true.
Giving people, give them a refreshment or something while they're there waiting.
And also just being more, and it doesn't matter if it's on the local level, the national level.
Right.
It always seems that there is something that people are talking about going, wait a minute, that doesn't, transparency, things like that we need to have more of to make sure that everybody understands, sees what's going on, knows that things are running the way they're supposed to.
Yeah. I go back to stewardship again, recognizing it's the people's money. It's not the government's money. And when you are a fee office, which those have been talked about some here recently, which I actually am of the school of thought that the fee office is one of the most ingenious things the framers of our state came up with because they're designed to operate in the black.
Okay.
They kind of have to.
Yeah.
You operate from the fees you take in.
Right.
And if you operate in a fiscally responsible manner, you'll actually have some left over to help bolster the county's general fund. And so it's not a bad model. It's the closest thing to government running like a business that we have. and we have it in our local governments. But you got to remember, it's the people's money, it's not yours.
That's right, at the end of the day.
At the end, yeah, and they get to decide, are you a good steward of it or aren't you?
That's right. Anything else real quick? We're almost out of time. Final thought?
Need a lot of prayers, a lot of support, and it's going to be a long run.
All right.
We're a year away.
Hey, we appreciate you coming by.
Thank you, Bo.
All right, I'm sure we'll be talking to you again here down the line. Hey, stay with us. We'll have our panel of pundits join us when we come back in 90 seconds. And welcome back to Tennessee This Week. A moment ago, we heard from Knox County Clerk candidate Richie Beeler. Let's bring in our panel of pundits to discuss what he had to say. Joining us today, Courtney Piper, Craig Griffith, Michael Covington. You know them by now. Great to have all three of you
Glad to be here
today.
Thank you.
Again, so let's talk about Richie Beeler. Michael, we'll start with you. Strong candidate here. I mean, as of right now, he's the only name in the pot, but we still have some time here.
He's probably the only name we need. Richie Beeler is as solid as the day is long. I have a great deal of respect for him as a professional and as just a person who loves this area and loves serving the people of Knox County. So I'm all in with Richie Beeler at this point, certainly.
Courtney?
The only thing people care about when they go to the county clerk, or even about the county clerk, is how long am I going to have to be there?
Right.
It is a customer service operation. So, you know, this is one of these offices that should be appointed by our county mayor. It should not be an elected position because it is purely customer service.
But he was talking about moving, maybe expanding, cut down on those
Sure.
lines, things like that
Sure.
he could do. But
Listen, Bo, I'm in East Knoxville, and I remember when there was a county clerk's office in the mall.
Right,
And then they moved it to the Markmans by the mall, and it was open on Saturdays, by the way. And then they moved it to another property that's around the mall, but it's not open on Saturdays. But listen, the county clerk's office right now, I like going to the one downtown, the main office. The last couple of years, I haven't had to wait very long to get the things done that I need to get done. So I can do it on a lunch hour. I can do it very quickly. And that's what people want from the county clerk.
But your main push there is that this should be an appointed
Right,
position.
there should not be anything political about the clerk's office.
Craig, what do you think? You agree with that? Also, your thoughts on Richie Beeler?
Oh, yes. Well, you've heard my, if you remodel a county government, all these constitutional offices they're administrative. They should all be appointed. They shouldn't be elected. Because when they're elected, you develop fiefdoms and you run into problems in certain offices. I won't name any, but we all know the trustee's office has problems. So there's no oversight. And secondly, it's a lifetime now between now and the election, and I don't know if anyone will come up and challenge Mr. Beeler in his election, but in terms of all these administrative offices, I have one word for them: automation. Their functions should be completely automated. And most of the county clerk, the license plates now you can go online and get all of that. And you can get that, you can get your boating licenses online from the state. They're moving toward this, and I think that automation is going to be what you're going to see in the future of this. And while he says they have 75 jobs now in the office, automation could reduce that to a much smaller number.
But listen, to participate in those automation services, you have to pay an extra fee. It actually costs less money to show up in person and get your tags renewed.
Well, how much is your time standing in line?
I don't have to stand in line anymore.
But it's the way of the future. You can't continue any job now that's so manually oriented to filling out a form, turning it in, and getting a product back is going to be automated.
Well, then those fees should reflect that. It should be
I
cheaper
would-
to participate in the automated version versus going down in
There's no
person.
reason why you should have a fee in an ATM.
Well-
The fee in an ATM is a fraction of what it costs to go in and see a teller in a bank. But yet you see the fees because they can charge them, because it's a convenience factor.
Not me, Craig. I'm not paying for convenience.
Oh, okay. Well, you're quite a woman.
I've got to let the gentleman smiling at the far end of the table. I was just listening to this conversation real quick. Jump in here.
As I was listening to Craig and Courtney go back and forth about this, I thought, I spend a lot more time in the clerk's office or around it than I ever thought about before. They do a fabulous job. Sherry Witt, second to none in terms of her having a vision about what shortens Courtney Piper's stand in line.
Exactly.
And I marvel at how she pushes every single button just so to make sure that everyone gets served in a timely manner. And she's imparting that wisdom and knowledge onto Richie Beeler.
And the reason Courtney doesn't stand in line is because 80% of the people now do it online. They don't need to go down to the office. That's why the lines are shortened. That's why automation will take over.
All right, well, we'll see how this one plays out moving down the line. But you mentioned the trustee's office just a moment ago, so we do want to change gears a little bit. Talk about the trustee's office. On Thursday, we learned Knox County District Attorney General Sharm Allen recused herself from the investigation into that office. Craig, we'll start with you. What do you make of this move?
Well, first of all, I'll point out that the investigation has not been handed over to a DA
That is
or
true.
a
That is true.
law enforcement agency like that. It's still being
If it gets to that
investigated
point,
at
right.
the comptroller's level. And so I think she really had no choice. I mean, the city-county building is one happy family down there. And you don't want and it's very hard to get someone who is going to be totally impartial in investigating one of those office holders. So it was the smart thing to do on her part, take away any appearance of impropriety. But we'll have to wait. Was this move unnecessary? Because will there actually be any charges brought by anybody? So we'll have to wait and see.
A good move, kind of looking down the road here. Courtney, do you think that Sharm Allen made at this moment?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know how she could not
Right.
recuse herself. And I sort of think of this move in, you can put your political filter lenses on, or you can take your upstanding citizen lenses on. To Craig's point, that's more of the upstanding citizen direction. If there is the potential for the comptroller to refer this to a DA, she wants to get out ahead of it and just say, look, I'm recusing myself, we can be proactive about this. Now, the other end of that spectrum is we know that this entire investigation started from an anonymous tip. And are there people within the happy family of the courthouse that want to push him out of office? So is this move more proactive way of trying to get our trustee to not run for re-election and just sort of, die quiet, his political career die quietly in the night?
Yeah, and Craig, or Michael, we should point out here, if it gets to that point, Blount County will jump in, the DA there
Right.
will assume the role. But you kind of go along with what Courtney's saying here, or Craig, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I think their thoughts are solid on this issue. As it relates to Sharm Allen, we've been friends for years, and one of the things I respect and admire about Sharm Allen is she's a very thoughtful person and a jurist. She made a decision. She made a thoughtful decision. I have to assume that Sharm made that decision based on things that she knows that she can't disclose, and a decision that was best for all concerned. And so Courtney's right. Yes, she absolutely had to recuse herself, but she recused herself for cause, and it's the cause that I'm concerned about.
Okay.
Well, but I don't know that we can read into her decision to pull out to say that there's a substantial basis for the investigation to be referred to the Attorney General yet. I don't think you can say that at all. And I think it sort of gets back to what Courtney was saying about anonymous sources. Are those sources actually going to go online? You have to have people testify, in a trial or in an investigation like that, or are they going to remain anonymous? And while it's pointed out some problems that the trustee's office has, it's not rising up to the level of, law enforcement intervention. So I don't think we should read anything into her decision to make this announcement about the credibility of the investigation.
This is a situation where an anonymous informant can steer an investigator in a direction where he finds gold. And in that instance, that anonymous source does not have to testify in any court case. All they have to do is to say, go here, look there, you will find. Once law enforcement finds it, once the state's top cop finds it, that's when the game begins. And they won't need witnesses. They'll have the evidence. And they found it legitimately. So,
All right, I tell you what, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back. We have several more topics to discuss, so keep it tuned right here. And welcome back to Tennessee This Week. We want to now focus on education for a moment, where the Knox County School Board hired a special education group of consultants to audit, and their findings were recently released. I know, Courtney, this is something you have been following closely for, so I'm going to let you start off the discussion here on what was all revealed and your take.
Sure. I read the report. I went to the May school board work session where the consultants presented the report. And Bo, I was astounded. The number of deficiencies that they identified in the Knox County Special Education Department are overwhelming, and produced 11 major recommendations for Knox County schools to take action. The volume of deficiencies that they identified points to one thing, and that's poor leadership. And that poor leadership was allowed to persist in the school system to the detriment of the very students it sought to serve. So with that volume of deficiencies, action needs to be taken at a board level. I know that Knox County Schools is also looking for new leadership. They are looking for a new special education director, which will be key to all of this. That director needs to have a demonstrated history of overcoming grand challenges. It can't be someone who just simply had a job well done operating a special education department. And to get into a few of the details, it's a lot of things that parents have been telling their school board members about, telling the superintendent about. So for example, one point that the audit found was that there are some case managers with a special education caseload of 40 students.
Wow.
You cannot expect excellence out of special education when you have one person who's in charge of managing 40 students. You can only expect survival. There were a number of discrepancies and deficiencies pointing out with how Knox County Schools identifies children that need reading support and then how they actually provide them with that support. They pointed out a widening gap between students with disabilities and students without disabilities. That gap being so wide, it called into question the academic trajectory of students with disabilities. And it called out a number of areas where Knox County did not have clear, transparent, and universally implemented protocols. It also mentioned that Knox County did a great job of creating frameworks, for example, to manage student behavior, but they're not used consistently. So again, this all points to leadership. The next steps here, which I'm enthusiastic about participating in, the same consulting group is supposed to lead a strategic planning process. Hopefully parents can be robustly engaged in that, and we get a new special education director soon to start tackling some of these problems.
Yeah, I know you'll continue to keep us up to date on that as well. Either one of you want to make a quick comment on this?
Well, I thought it was interesting in listening to the discussion at the school board meeting about the effect of lawsuits on this whole process. That there have been a number of lawsuits that have certainly worked in the favor of the special students. And it noted that in the back of people's minds, I think, in the school board and in the school administration is how is this going to impact a future lawsuit? And that certainly shouldn't be anything that they take into consideration. What they should take into consideration is how it's going to impact the student. You know, what are we going to do to improve this student so that they can maximize their achievements in their life, no matter whether they have learning disabilities or whether it's something that's you know, a problem at home or things like that. It's how we make the best effort to educate our students.
And let me point out something that's especially troubling about that. The law, the federal law, says that these teams are supposed to make decisions based on the best interest of the student. Nothing else should come into play. So by having it on paper and documented that we have people who are making decisions not in the best interest of students is troubling. It shows how there is lots of room for improvement for Knox County Schools to actually follow federal education law.
I tell you what, real quick, we're almost out of time, but I do quickly want to touch on the Vanderbilt poll. Michael, anything from that? It came out this week. Any of the findings, the numbers, anything that jumps out at you from that poll?
Well, something jumped out of me when I read it initially. It was, wow. These polls that they put out are pretty accurate in terms of what you would think citizens are actually interested or not interested in. So I think the poll indicates that there's still some unreadiness to deal with what Donald Trump is doing in terms of Medicare, Medicaid, HUD, and affordable housing. The bridge is going away because of language in an application. I still think we have to have some time to flesh out what it is that Donald Trump is doing, good and bad.
30 seconds. Courtney, anything you want to add real quick?
We know that Americans are against DOGE. Now we know that Tennesseans are against the way that DOGE is operating.
Craig, real quick.
Social Security, Medicare, the fifth rail of America in politics. If they touch that, it's going to be a battle royale.
All right, and on that note, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks so much for joining us, and as always, we look forward to seeing you right back here next week on Tennessee This Week.
On Tennessee This Week are their own and do not represent the views of WATE 6 on your side or Nexstar Broadcasting.